We have an incredible guest here today, the esteemed Mr. Luke Storey, or the Life Stylist, who has a giant podcast that you've been doing now for years, right?
2 years, yeah.
2 years.
Just past 2 years, June 6th.
Man, I feel like I know you so well because I've listened to, I think, almost every
Oh,
episode.
really? I didn't know that.
From the
That's
very
cool.
beginning. Yeah.
That's cool, man.
It's incredible information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's
so,
going well.
so glad to have you. I'm also here with Kevin Peak, president of Next Health, and I'm Dr. Darshan Shah, CEO of Next Health. And we are going to talk today about living in the city of Los Angeles, which if there's a place where toxins accumulate, this is definitely one of them. And want to hear everything that you've experienced and all your advice after all your years of experimentation and things that you've done to eliminate these toxins. But before we start on that, Luke, I want to get a little bit of your story. Like, why did you start this podcast?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. The last time we were here with Naveen, when he did his talk, Naveen James, we were in this room. And I swear, I have not laughed that hard. It's sad, but I've not laughed that hard in a long time. And that night, there's just some, you guys are super lit. Like whatever you're doing at Next Health is working because you guys are super high energy and high vibe and always so happy and so kind to me and have been so supportive. So I just wanted to say that from the minute I came into Next Health, you guys have always just been super down, ride or die. So thank you.
The feeling's totally mutual, by the way. So.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for listening to the show. You know, it's funny. I started it. The first one was June, I think it was June 6th, 2016. So we just passed 2 years and I'm creeping up on 2 million downloads. And so
it's amazing.
It is, yes. And I want to be grateful for that. And thank you to anyone that hears this, that's listened, and please go listen if you haven't. And I was super excited. And then I saw a post. This is just the way my effed up brain works. But I saw Tim Ferriss did a post the other day of his top 5 podcasts that he's ever done. And they were all over 2 million per episode. I was like, God damn it. Why did I have to see that? I felt pretty good. But then I looked in, there's some stats on Libsyn, which is, where you host your podcast. And if you're over 20,000 downloads per week, which I am, you're in the top 5 percentile of all podcasts in the universe.
Wow.
So that made me feel a little better. So it's going well.
And if it's any additional consolation, I'd say that you're probably the best looking, best dressed podcaster that's out there. I mean, you literally, dude. For those of you who are not watching, you look like you just stepped out of a GQ magazine. So
I appreciate it. It has a lot to do with my visits to Next Health. A lot of IVs and a lot of cryo. Let me back up. Sometimes I can do this story very briefly and sometimes it takes forever. So I'm trying to get my kind of elevator pitch down. Essentially, guys, man, I grew up in a really toxic environment in many ways, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, experienced a lot of trauma as a kid, grew up in the 70s on junk food, got into drugs really, really young, like in grade school, had a lot of problems with the law and all this kind of stuff. So I was a really troubled kid and just experienced a lot of rough times. And so by the time I was 26, I'd moved to Hollywood when I was 19 to pursue the rock and roll dream, which it was. It was fun for a minute. Then it was fun with some problems. And then it was just problems. Then it was problems with extra problems attached to those problems. So I got really caught up in kind of the underworld of Hollywood and the drug scene and all that. And so by the time I was 26, felt like I was 90 and was just bankrupt in so many ways. And my health really suffered physically also because I was just, eating some just completely toxic diet and drinking way too much and doing all of these drugs and stuff. So I was just in really bad shape. I'm 6'2", right? Was then also, hopefully I haven't shrunk. Right now I'm 180 on a good day. I was 135 pounds.
Wow.
So if you can imagine, I was emaciated. I was on my way out. And so through a series of events that are a longer story, I ended up sobering up and, checked myself into a treatment center. Just imagine the show Intervention, like that was my life. I just did an intervention on myself though. I was like talking to myself in the mirror, you need help, man, you're a disaster. But I had this really profound spiritual experience on February 15th, 1997. And I was just struck sober and I started to integrate spirituality and meditation and things like that into my life, and got deeply involved in addiction recovery, and first to save my own ass, and then also later on helping other people and things like that. But what I realized really early on was that it was great having cleaned up, and that was a good start. I wasn't breaking any laws anymore, and I was living above board and got a bank account, and my life started to become a little more manageable on the outside, but I was still so physically sick and so physically toxic, and I was so weak. And so I started to see that it was going to be necessary to get on a detox protocol physically, as well as pursuing the spiritual life. Because I kind of tried in the beginning to just, well, I guess the answer is I need to be spiritual. So I have this sense of connection, and I had this miraculous experience, and it couldn't be explained in any other way than there's some sort of higher power had guided me and protected me. But my body was still a shell. So that's in 97. That's when I got into health. And back then, the first things that I got into, because it was just in vogue in natural healing back then, was colonics and you'd eat bentonite clay, then you take all these herbs to poop, then you do colonics for a series of days, and infrared saunas were really big, and making your own kombucha, and bee pollen was like the big superfood back then. And so I got into all of that kind of early cleansing and herbalism and stuff, but I didn't stop once I got healthy. Once I felt good, and this is true to this day, once I started feeling my physical energy, then it was like, man, if I feel this good, I wonder how far you can take this. And so now here we are 22 years later, practically, just about 22 years later, and I feel really good most of the time. But if I suffer at all, I'm like, I got to fix this. Like, I know there's a way to feel even better. So 2 years ago, I decided to retire from my 17-year career as a fashion stylist, which is a whole other story. Stopped doing that. Still continue to have a business called School of Style, which is a fashion school I founded 10 years ago. That's kind of my main revenue. That's my day job. And started this podcast as a way to share all of the things that I've discovered in the world of spirituality, mindfulness, meditation, all the metaphysical range of experts and practices, but then also exploring the most cutting edge biohacking stuff, so that I can kind of attract people from both sides. And the purpose of the show is really to sort of translate some of the really geeky scientific health practices that are hard for people to implement or understand, translate those into something that's practical and applicable for your average person to have, huge impact and huge changes for them. And then to take the woo-woo esoteric spiritual realm and interview really far out, Kundalini yoga teachers or meditation teachers, and again, translate their teachings and practices into something that an average normal person can integrate into their lives. So it's been a huge gift, and I've learned so much because I get access to people that are so brilliant. And so it's been really fun. And you're going to be on my show soon too, and you'll be one of those brilliant people, Dr. Shah, that I get to pick the brain of. So yeah, it's just been an amazing 2 years. My whole life has changed completely. I did a 180, and I just have a totally new career. Now I'm doing talks all over the country and helping tons of people. And it's insane.
I love it. What I love about your show in particular is that you have this great balance of mind and body. Almost every episode you talk about your spirituality, how to connect this with your relationships and kind of the externality. It's not just all about taking care of your body. I mean, that's what we do at Next Health, but there's a huge component of involving spirituality, meditation, your relationship with God into your health. And I really personally feel like in my own health that when I became more spiritual, when I started meditating, it affected every other organ system in my body. And you talk about that every episode.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I just naturally did that, as I said, because it was part of my journey, and I needed the physical energy in order to pursue my spiritual practices. But when I first started doing Hatha yoga, which was, just your general like Ayurvedic approach to yoga, with a guy named Mas Vidal, who's been on my show. He had a studio in near Erewhon in Hollywood called Dancing Shiva. And I started going there maybe 15 years ago. And he always explained to me that the purpose of physical asana, of the yoga, was to prepare your vessel for the spiritual download at the end of class for the meditation. And that really struck me, that the purpose of really keeping the meat suit or the physical body, the vehicle that we're granted, thankfully, to keep that tuned up, that the purpose of that is not to get abs and like feed your ego, although abs would be nice. I wouldn't mind having some. But is to have the spiritual energy and the power so that you can actually go manifest your destiny and be of service in the world. When you're depressed or sick or lacking energy or you're toxic physically, it's really difficult to have what it takes to go out there and have emotional stability and balance and be able to express that love in the world that makes life worth living. I mean, this is true for me. I slept like crap last night, as I was telling you guys, and I was totally irritable for the first half of the day. I don't think anyone suffered as a result, but I could feel it just being around people, getting an email. I felt angry. I felt irritable. And it was so easily traced to the lack of physical energy. My mitochondria are pissed and not functioning because I got crappy sleep for whatever reason. So it's affecting me emotionally and spiritually. So I might want to go out and be Mr. Meditator and, love and light, man. My body's going, no, we don't have that. You're in survival mode. You just got to keep your head down and try not to get pissed at anyone. So you can't have one without the other.
And it's really incredible to hear your journey. I mean, I didn't know anything about that. And, I love hearing kind of the transition in life that you've been through. And I think it takes a lot of courage to go from that, upbringing that you've had, to decide to make a change for the better. And I think a lot of people, there's a great lesson in there that there's so many seasons in life, that it's like to have the courage to realize like, okay, just because this is where I am today, it's not where I'm going to end up. And personally, I've gone through that as well. I mean, I've definitely had a bit of a tumultuous childhood also. And, I've gone through these transitions as well to be where I am today. So I love seeing, where you are now. I mean, you're really inspiring so many people. And I just love that you're on that path.
Thanks, dude. I mean, listen, if suffering doesn't have a purpose, I wouldn't want to be a human. You know what I mean? It's like, why are we here? That's that existential issue that people always have with the concept of God is, why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow darkness? And to me, it's because there has to be contrast. We have to have the ability to use our free will and to choose different levels of ascension, right? So I came in at a certain level, my soul entered into an environment that was optimal for my growth because it was rough. But that's my kind of my superpower now, because I have a lot of empathy for people that are in pain, and I'm driven to help alleviate the pain and suffering of other people because I know what it feels like. If I had the rosy, the rosy childhood with the nuclear family and, no abuse and no neglect and no abandonment and no, of the things that I experienced, I don't know that I would have that sense of depth as a person and be able to relate to people on such a level. I mean, you guys, I really walk around. I mean, aside from your minor human irritability, like I described earlier, and just, day-to-day shit that annoys you, the parking machine doesn't work when you put your ticket in. God damn it, I swear I get pissed for 2 seconds, then I'm over it. But most of the time, I really do feel that my life has a purpose. I have a pretty healthy self-esteem, and more than anything, I have very loving feelings toward other people, just everyone throughout my day. I mean, I feel connected to my heart. And I think that's rooted in, some of the rougher times earlier. Because in order to get out of that shit, you got to do some inner work.
Right.
Yeah.
And you could definitely tell that, like you exude this love for people that when you walk around, I love it. I love like seeing you smile, even like right now, it just exudes from you. And so it's just a fantastic state to be in. I mean, you can't be in that all the time, but I think it takes practice to maintain that state. And then you find yourself in it kind of like all the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have that natural state. Mm-hmm. Well, I know we do. It's just that sometimes it gets obscured by the mind.
LA traffic.
Yeah. We all have the capacity for unconditional love. It's who we are. It's what we are. We're all aspects of universal consciousness, truly. And the human experience is challenging, and we get disconnected from that for a number of different reasons, So it's not about like having to become spiritual. For me, it's just removing the blocks in my consciousness in my day-to-day life that prevent me from manifesting and expressing who I really am. And things like meditation make that possible. So I can meditate and see, wow, this mind is really a freak show, and just kind of watch it like a projector shows a film on the screen, and then you get to sit on the couch and watch it rather than being in the film all the time. And that's been, something I've been building into my life for 22 years. So there's a little gap of separation between being impulsive and compulsive and reactionary, because I'm seated a lot of the time from a more witness perspective. So, sure, I'll get irritable. Sure, I'll get triggered by something, but it doesn't last. It's just quick. I'm able to see it. Just like earlier today, I noticed, oh yeah, I'm pretty irritable. And so when I look at those emails that are really annoying, I just decided I'm going to deal with these tomorrow, when I can think more clearly and I can come at them and be patient with people and be kind and don't punish people because they're not as smart as I think they should be or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I got a couple of emails and I was like, really? And then I saw, but well, what's awesome is I saw my mind starting to argue with reality. Yeah. And that's the root of all human suffering, is my mind went, why didn't she do the thing? I told her 20 times. And there's this whole dialogue that's going on. But for years, I didn't even know that dialogue was happening. Mm-hmm. I thought, when you're so enamored with your own thoughts and so captured by them, you tend to think that that's who you are and that that's reality. Wow. But with meditation, and then not only meditation in your seated practice, but meditating and then carrying that sense of awareness throughout the day, with practice, of course, not always successfully, but I get better at that. So I see my mind going, okay, I want to send an email back and punish this person right now and show them how stupid they are, because then I'll feel a sense of relief, because I'll get to express some of my anger and frustration on them, and then I'll feel better. And that happens in a millisecond. It's not like I'm sitting there analyzing myself and putting myself through some Jungian psychology thing, or in the car. No, I just see that and I see the impulse, and 2 seconds later it's like, oh no, yeah, tomorrow I'll do the emails. I'm not in a place to do that. It's really beautiful to be able to live with that sense of freedom, where a lot of the time there's enough self-awareness to be able to see when the mind is taking control or the ego is taking control, and when me, who I really am, my soul, is the one that's driving.
I think what you just described there is one of the main benefits of meditation, just making yourself self-aware throughout the day. And, I talk a lot about meditation. Meditation has tremendous health benefits, but it's not just sitting down twice a day or whatever you do for 20 minutes and meditating and clearing your mind. That's definitely extremely helpful. But if you're able to carry it out throughout the day, that same feeling of taking a step back and being an observer of your thoughts and using that as a kind of a pause in your reaction. Some people call it having some EQ, but I think is more than just emotional quotient. It's just everything around you. It's extremely beneficial in not just reducing your own stress, but how you react to other people. And you just get so much more love, and you get so much more of people's nice feelings back towards you, instead of just having this immediate reaction of anger towards them. It gets them to kind of think positively towards you as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so true. I do these little tricks sometimes, these experiments, while I'll go into the bank, right? And I'll be having a good day, let's say, and I feel pretty connected, I feel pretty grounded. And I'll walk in and just imagine what the experience could be like if I went in there and I was bitching in my mind about, why are there 14 teller stations and only 2 people working there? When I look at all the late fees and all the crap, all the whatever, right? I'll think, okay, I could have an experience where I walk in the bank right now and I'm already pissed, just because I'm just pissed, because the mind it has that negativity bias where it finds fault with everything. It always looks for what's wrong, in my mind especially, because I trained it to be like that my whole life, because I was in this survival mode. But I'll do this experiment where I go in and I imagine, sort of like an alternate universe where I could go in there exuding that frustration, exuding that fault finding, that anger, that irritability, and imagine the kind of reactions that I'm going to get from the people in line, that when I got to go grab the pen and someone's in my way and I kind of give them attitude, and now they're giving me attitude, and I go up to the teller and I'm pissed and she makes me enter the thing twice. I'm fucking already did it. I just kind of imagine and just run through that in a almost Forrest Gump, kind of way, whereas you can see those scenarios play out and then go, no, what if I actually create my own reality and manifest the reality that I want? And walk in the bank and see the mom that's struggling with her kid, and the kid won't listen. Instead of being annoyed with that kid, just sending them feelings of love and giving her a big warm smile. and letting someone else get in front of me because they're a little bit slow and older, and getting finally up to the teller and having just a sense of appreciation for the fact that they're there and they're helping me. And I don't mean to be not in a pious, like do-gooder kind of way, but a really heartfelt, sincere experience of life where there's an appreciation for all of the experiences, not just the ones when I'm at the beach on my day off, loving life, but the ones that are the tedious times. And it's really fun to be able to play with reality like that. It's almost like this quantum physics sort of, universe manipulation in a sense, where you can take a situation and, exactly like you said, you can extract the sort of reaction that you want out of your own reality as manifested in other people by what you project into it. And it's just crazy. I mean, you can do like A/B tests of every day you live your life. Every day that you go out irritable and pissed off, you're going to meet assholes all day long. It's just insane how that works. There's this magnetism of energy, positive or negative, and it's neutral. The universe says we're going to magnetize and mirror whatever energy you want to put out, and it gives you whatever you want. If you want to go out and get in a fight every day, it's easy to do. My little brother Cody, I noticed this. He's not like this anymore. He's a meditator now. But when he was younger, everywhere we went on vacation, he'd end up in a fist fight with someone. There'd be blood and police called. We were on a cruise ship once. I go, on a cruise ship? How do you get in a violent altercation? You're in the Bahamas, you're chilling. He comes back one night with blood all over his shirt. He'd been in the brig. He beat, he's like at the time probably 23, something like that. He beat up some 40-year-old guy who was drunk and talking shit to him. I used to look at him and go, dude, how do you find a fight everywhere you go? And he didn't understand it, but it's because he had so much anger inside that was unresolved, and he had no way to deal with it, that he had this magnetic attractor field for other angry people that had repressed and suppressed their anger and their trauma, and he would just trauma bond with other alpha males wherever he went, and he'd end up in fisticuffs. And I'm just at that time, I'm sober, I'm meditating, I'm this peace-loving guy, and I would look at that and go, wow, that's crazy. He doesn't know that he's creating that everywhere he goes. I've been in a fight maybe twice my whole life. Not that I haven't been a jerk and deserved to get my ass beat on many occasions. I think I've been lucky to avoid that, but I also, for a long time, just don't live in a world where I'm bringing that out of people. If I sense that, I stop what I'm doing and I go, oh yeah, me and this person are not separate. We're one connected, unified energy field in a different body. And I know that. It's not a concept I read in a book. It's my experience. And you can prove it by giving that person the energy that you want. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you can completely create your own reality. And the power of thoughts and the power of visualization are just incredible. I started recently, my form of meditation that I got this from Tony Robbins is I do, visualization. He calls it priming every morning.
Yeah.
And it's just been a complete game changer for me. I went through, I was trying for a long time to get into meditation. I was struggling with it. And then with Tony Robbins, he showed me how to do his priming exercise, which I now do every morning, where I start by, first I do breath work, and then I do visualizations of 3 goals that I'm going to accomplish that day, and I actually see myself going through the process of accomplishing every single one of those goals and taking the steps needed to accomplish those goals during that day. And then I visualize, or I think of 3 things that I have gratitude for, and I see what I have gratitude. I feel it, I smell it, every piece of it, and then I visualize the people that I love. Everyone, you're in it. I think of you in it. I think of people from close to, then it just extends out to almost everyone. And it was such a shift for me when I was starting my morning with this powerful visualization of just all positivity and love and gratitude. To start your day like that is just incredible. It's a complete game changer.
Yeah, that's funny. I forgot about the priming thing. I finally drank the Kool-Aid and went to a Tony Robbins event. I think it was a few months ago in San Jose. The entry one, Unleash the Power Within, right? I never knew anything about that guy, but then I saw the documentary, the Netflix thing, and I said, that dude's got it. That guy's the real deal. When you see him work with people, I know people like that. I've experienced that. And I was like, I'm in. So I went and did that. But what's funny is a lot of those practices, a lot of the stuff he recommends, I already do. But the priming thing in the morning, I have my own morning routine that's like 3 hours. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's got to, actually, I have to find a way to shorten it. It's just not productive, but I just love to meditate and do my thing. But the primary thing, because you have to do something so specific and it takes concentration, I never did it because I'm too groggy in the morning. I'm so out of it when I wake up. I can't really form thoughts that are that cognizant, so.
But that's why I love it, because when I get up, it gets me going.
Okay.
I wake up and I'm just ready to attack the day and work. And my challenge with meditation is it would slow me down. Once I was done doing a 20, 30-minute meditation, I feel like I'm still sleeping. Whereas this, it's like you jump up with so much power and energy, you're ready to just charge for the entire day. Right. So that's what I like about it.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. It's funny. Today I switched up my routine a little bit. Because what I usually do, oh God, how do I say this and not make it 4 hours? Doing it takes 3 hours. Explaining it's 10 hours. But what in my meditation practice, which is called Vedic meditation, it's a mantra base. It comes from the same lineage as TM, right? So it's a transcendental style meditation. You're supposed to get up, maybe have a tea, a glass of water, immediately meditate for 20 minutes, right? That's the tradition. But I've always kind of cheated that. I get up, I make my bulletproof coffee, I put it in a hot cup. I don't drink any of it because I don't want caffeine. It'll ruin the meditation. And I make my little morning elixir with all kinds of weird stuff in it. I drink that, I take a shower, I take the dog out. I go stand in front of my Juve red light thing naked while I drink the morning drink. So by the time I meditate, I've already ingested a bunch of superfoods and some herbs and stuff, and I'm kind of amped from that. Then I do meditation, breath work. I'll do my hydrogen inhaler while I'm doing that. I'll do my Fisher-Wallace stimulator, which is this cranial electrocute your brain shit for anxiety and depression and sleep. I'll run the amp coil. I'll do my Nano V. I'm connected up to probably literally 6 gadgets during my meditation. But what happens is I go so deep into the meditation. Like you said, I come out of it and I'm like, oh my God, now I have to ramp up again and get hyped again because I was already kind of awake. Then I went back down. Then I jump on the trampoline. I got to do all this shit and I'm so groggy. Next thing you know, it's noon and everyone's like, dude, hello, where are you? So today, it's a problem. So today I actually did the opposite. I got up, I jumped in the shower, then I meditated and got my chill on. Then I started to ramp up and do all the other stuff. And it was actually a better program.
Yeah, that's my program exactly. Because I can't go into meditation totally calm if I've already had like a big morning. So I do meditation first, and then I do all my workout and my reading and all my other stuff right after it. So
I guess that's a reason why for the past 12,000 years the rishis in the Himalayas have been doing it that way. It's like maybe I should listen to my teacher, but it's tough. It's tough because I get caught in a little routine like that. And, I'm on autopilot. I walk in, I boil the water, I do the thing, and then you just get stuck in that. So it's hard for me to wrestle a habit out of my own hands and do it in a different order. I can still do the same stuff, but I think it's important, Kevin. You kind of reminded me of maybe why I'm so slow and why that process takes so long in the mornings, because I kind of have to wake up twice in a sense. Wow.
After my
epiphany. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this whole subject of morning routines is like one of my favorite topics in the whole world, because my life literally changed about 5 years ago when I started a morning routine, and I got up at like 5 o'clock every morning and I just did 2 hours of morning routine. Totally changed my entire life. And I did it right before my first son was born, because I was like, I need to get myself healthy. I need to get myself into a place where I'm happy with myself. And so when did you start your morning routine? When did you start and how did it develop over time?
Well, when I got sober, I quickly realized that the antithesis of physical sobriety is lacking mental and emotional sobriety. So when I very first got sober, it was like, cool, I'm clean. Now I can just not do drugs and still act like a jerk all day long and just wake up in the morning, just like drink a bunch of coffee, maybe throw on some porn, smoke a couple cigarettes, eat a pint of Haagen-Dazs, go out and be sober. I mean, literally, that's how I used to live. I'm not even playing. When I was, I'm 20, I was 26, 27. But that's how I'd start my day. And so what would happen is I would, maybe I prayed a little bit, like, God, make sure I stay sober, and then I'm going to go act like a fool. But what would happen was I just felt so crazy. I had no sense of groundedness, and I was extremely angry and just so anxious and depressed, and I was just an emotional basket case. And then as I started to get a little more sobriety and work with different teachers and mentors, especially one in particular, I mean, in order to work with him, it was non-negotiable. First thing in the morning, you had to meditate and you had to read spiritual literature before you let your mind do anything like get on a cell phone, emails, go out in the world, run errands. I mean, you definitely weren't watching porn and eating ice cream for breakfast. That was not on the menu with my teacher. So he was anti-porn, anti-sugar, anti-cigarettes. He was no saint by any stretch, but in terms of morning routine, he said, dude, your mind, you've been building, at this time, maybe I'm 30 years old or something, right? He goes, you've been building a mind for 30 years that is bent toward negativity and bent toward fear, bent toward worst case scenarios, bent towards cyclical, endless rumination, of caught in mind and emotion. And if you get up and you just let the mind kind of unravel through your day without setting that morning intention and filling it with something other than what you're bringing to the table, which is all of your past habitual thinking and whatnot, you're going to have shitty days and you won't stay sober. So thank God it was kind of a life or death thing for me, because for me, it's not like, oh, I kind of, have a few too many beers at football games here and there and annoy people. No, I'm bad when I'm doing my thing. It's not good. So it was extremely important to me that I stayed sober, and I could see when I was running around in the world and always in a hurry and always freaked out and just in this really excited state all the time that I was just, it was impossible to stay sober. So I did. I never had a relapse or anything, but I think it's because I met that one teacher, and he would look, anytime I was screwed up, he'd be like, how's your morning reading going? I was like, God damn it. And that meant that I was reading recovery literature, or, later on it was things like Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount, Eckhart Tolle when Power of Now came out, and books like that, whatever, just something that represented universal truth and the importance of pondering those ideas and concepts and those words and making that my frame of mind from the beginning. And so as I started to integrate those two habits, the meditation and prayer too, connecting with God in a set aside way, then I was much less prone to be freaked out all day long. It set that tone. And it was so noticeable because on days that I would skip it when I hadn't had the practice in there, and I would just run out and just run to the grocery store, go to work, or just like you said, Kevin, just get up and like, I want to crush it, start working, I'd be freaking insane. So there was that contrast. I could see kind of, again, an A/B test. Oh man, this is serious, especially for someone like me that just had such a weird mind. I mean, I'm just nuts if I'm not spiritually centered. I'm a basket case. So it was like I had to be beaten into submission in order to make that a practice by my own mind, really, just by how discontented and irritable. And also for me, I think without that morning thing, it's not only the irritability and the propensity toward anger, but I'll also just feel a lot weaker. It's like I don't feel like a man. I feel afraid of the world and very threatened by people and circumstances, and just like I'm a little rowboat that's just being tossed around at sea, you know what I mean? With no anchor, I'm just very unstable feeling and very easily swayed into my emotions. And so, now it's been so many years, I think, since I've skipped that morning routine. I'm just terrified as to what would happen if I just got up and thought, oh, today I'll just get on the computer and start doing emails. Oh, hell no. Yeah, exactly. Even today, like I was saying, I still haven't checked my emails today. I took a peek and I have 3 or 4 accounts, how you do. And it was, the unreads were like 52, 47, 39. I was like, nope, I just didn't have it today. I had to get ready for this. And, the sleep was, as I said, was weak. So I never did get to that. The last thing I would do is get up and start interacting with the world before I remember who I am and why I'm here.
Yeah, what I love about that is, for you and for me and for you as well, I think for anyone that has a morning routine, sometimes that's the only 1 or 2 hours you get to do any self-care in the entire day. Because in the minute you get out in the world, it's like you have emails hitting you all day long. You have decisions you need to make. And sometimes you don't make it to the gym. It's like that self-care is so important. And for me, if I miss it at all, the whole rest of the day I feel like shit, and even the next day. So I don't sleep well. It's a bad day if I don't get the morning routine in. So self-care is super important.
That's true, because once you alert the people in your world to the fact that you're up and at them, they want shit from you. That's the thing. Once I answer one email, they're like, there he is, ding, 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 ding. And I'm going to be getting hit up hardcore. So I do my best even to keep my phone on airplane and not start engaging with it. I don't do that well. I definitely don't check my emails, but in a perfect world, I would keep my phone on airplane, or maybe even just keep it in another room and not engage with technology at all until I've taken care of myself, because that is the only time often you get. Maybe before you go to bed, not if you have kids and stuff and a wife. I'm single, no kids, so I don't have that. But yeah, the world starts to tug at you once they know you're tuggable. So I kind of like to hide out in the morning to make sure that I'm loving myself and taking care of myself for 5 or 6 hours. No, I'm just kidding. Forever, much to the chagrin of my business partner, Lauren. She's always like, okay, it's 1 o'clock. Do you think you're ready now, Mr. Meditator? Like, we got shit to do.
Hilarious. I mean, even from an environmental toxin standpoint, it's one of the only times that we can really disconnect and push all these, electronic toxins away from ourselves. To have the discipline to do that, I think is something that probably everyone struggles with. I think very few people do actually do that. So I think it's great to be able to try to keep all that away for as long as possible, to just give the body that opportunity to reset and not just be bombarded by the lights and just everything else that's coming from the devices that we're connected to 24/7.
Totally. There's another thing I've been realizing with, speaking of the morning routine and the phone, and this speaks to the idea of keeping it on an airplane, not engaging with social media. I do have a habit right now, unfortunately, of just refreshing Instagram and Twitter when I'm having my morning tonic in front of the Juve. I could do curls, which is really what I'd like to do. I have my little dumbbells sitting there and I'm like, dumbbells or Twitter? Twitter. 90% of the time, I'm going to be honest. But I notice what happens is you get that dopamine reward system going. And if that gets going, it tends to kind of create a trend the rest of the day where I'm much more prone to keep checking my phone, and I have that neurotic, addictive relationship to technology. But if I'm the master of it from the time I get up, which I do sometimes, and don't engage at all, it seems to give me more of a resistance to interacting with it, and just kind of to have more authority over my relationship with technology as the day goes on. If I jump right to it, I'll be much more prone to the addictive.
Yeah, then you're a slave to it all day.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not going anywhere. It's still there. You can leave it alone for a while and you're still relevant. It's still, it's still accessible.
You just sound like my every ex-girlfriend. And then my thing's always like, babe, it's for my work. You don't understand. I'm an influencer.
and Twitter, you can justify that you're getting news updates, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the double-edged sword. Speaking to living in the city and doing the things that I do for a living, people always say, why don't you just disconnect? You don't need social media. And it's like, well, I kind of do. It is part of my job. And it sucks though, because even when I get out of the city, part of my brand, I guess you could say, is helping people discover lifestyle practices, right? So building the ultimate lifestyle is what my show's about. That involves getting out in nature, going to the hot springs, going and sun gazing at the beach on Sunday. So a lot of stuff I do out in the world, I like to share with people because it inspires them or teaches them how to integrate, nature and things like that into their life, going to hot springs, skinny dipping, ice baths, all that. But it sucks because I have to have my phone there to document it, to share it via social media. So it sort of defeats the purpose of disconnecting. I feel like because I put myself in this position, I can't disconnect because then I'm not making content out of those experiences.
Yeah, I have a strategy for you. Just this whole subject of electronic addiction and, the dopamine hit you get every time you refresh your Instagram feed. I mean, it's fascinating to me because it's so true. Like, we've invented basically another drug with social media, I think. And a couple of things that some people do, and this is not feasible for you, is don't have any social media apps on your phone. Only use it on your desktop computer. So you have to actually go to a computer and use it. That's one thing.
Man, I just got to chill up my spine.
I know, right? No. Well, the second thing is have a second phone that doesn't have cell phone signal on it, or it does have cell phone signal, but doesn't have all your personal communication, and it's your work phone that's only there for posting and only there for, all your social media stuff you do. So that's something that I've seen a few influencers do, just because it gets a little nuts to disconnect from your social media world.
Damn, that's a good idea. Yeah. I do have that second iPhone that doesn't have service, it just has Wi-Fi. That's what gets me with, I really am very prone to addictions of anything. I mean, I had to wean myself off of everything. In fact, someone today DM'd me on Instagram just randomly, and she said, "Man, I really love your podcast. I listen to almost every show, but the swearing on your show is really offensive to me. And God, I would just love it," or whatever she said. "I love your show. I try to listen, but it's tough." And of course, my immediate reaction is like, "I'll show you, bitch." I felt all defensive. But again, the meditator in me is like, "It's cool. No need to punish her. Let's take a look at that." And I thought, you know what? I kind of am addicted to swearing. And I texted her back. I said, "Wow, that's an interesting observation. I've heard it before. Out of all of the habits that I've been able to quit," which, I mean, I'll just be honest, crack cocaine, heroin, alcohol, marijuana, pills, cigarettes, pornography, toxic relationships, anger, intentionally hurting other people. I mean, just all of these kind of behavioral issues I've overcome 100%, many of them. But I try not to swear on my podcast, and I can't stop. I'm like, I need to go to a 12-step group, like Cussers Anonymous or something. So I said, "Thank you for pointing it out. That's because you're right." But I'm very prone to addictive sort of behaviors where I'm doing it and I don't realize I'm doing it. And the phone, aside from the swearing thing, which I don't know if it's an addiction, but it's definitely a habit that's tough for me to break. But with the phone, dude, I can't resist refreshing my Instagram, and I'll find myself in the car at every red light, like ding, ding, checking it again. I'm like, I don't need to, nothing ever happens on Instagram. It's not like someone DMs me and is like, "Hey, want $100,000? It's like, nothing that awesome really happens there. Exactly. What am I looking for? I'm just looking for like, ooh, cool. Something exciting happened, or ooh, I'm scared. Someone's mad because I swear, or whatever. It's just that dopamine. Sucks, yeah.
Is there not an app yet that where you can force block all social media? Can you switching to kind of airplane mode of social media where you then
Apple is actually, their next iOS will have anti-addiction measures on it. So things like turning your phone gray at a certain time of night so you're less likely to see all the colors. They're building in a lot of these features because cell phone addiction and app addiction is a huge problem now. And I think the corporations that make these apps and cell phones are getting a lot of blowback for causing this problem. Just one quick thing. The difference between addiction and habit. So there's a great book called The Power of Habit. Have you read this book or heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's an
I think I've
book.
heard, who's the author?
I can't remember the name of the author right now.
I think I've heard them on podcasts before.
Yeah. These guys are great. They've done a ton of research into habits and how to break habits like swearing. So the swearing thing is not an addiction because it doesn't really create a dopamine hit or a change in your brain hormones,
right.
But
it's not technically destroying my life, but I can't stop.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a great book about talking about how to change habits with positive reinforcement, negative reinforcements, breaking habits. It helped me a lot with my morning routine actually, and doing what's called habit stacking, where you start adding things in at certain times,
Right.
But but the addictive thing, what's really incredible is a lot of addictive behaviors, believe it or not, they're finding now actually center in the mitochondria. All right.
What?
Yeah. And a lack of mitochondrial function to be able to combat addictive behavior. And so it's one of the reasons they're thinking NAD is such an incredible treatment for addiction. And having your cells having the energy to be resilient on a cellular level might unlock the key to addiction. So that's kind of a big theory right now being researched in the medical world, especially in the addiction and NAD world.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a somewhat secret fantasy, I think, of many alcoholics, recovering alcoholics, that someday someone will invent some shit where you can have a couple beers, on New Year's Eve and not go smoke crack and end up in a motel with a bunch of hookers. It's like people that have the thing that I have, whatever it is, I still don't really quite understand it, but I'm definitely a unique animal in that way. it's not like I have a desire. I don't want to just have 2 beers, to be honest. But me and we do wonder. I wonder if someday you can, you take a pill or get a shot that allows you to just have a glass of wine at your kid's wedding or something, and not totally lose your shit and end up in prison or something. It's just, or smoke weed every once in a while. I don't really think about it, but with things like that, I anticipate that at some point they might be able to shut off that circuitry in your brain where you don't immediately get snatched up. Now, I'm not going to be the first one to try it out. Trust me. I'm good with abstinence, but yeah, it's fascinating how that works. I didn't know that.
They've identified genes too that make you more prone to addictive behaviors. So maybe there's a genetic signal that we can modify.
Right. I mean, I've definitely noticed a pattern. Most people I know that have had substance abuse issues, it absolutely runs in their family. I've yet to meet one person in recovery who's like, yeah, I'm the only alcoholic in 5 generations. I mean, it definitely seems to, run like that. So.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of segue into, environmental toxins.
Sure.
With what we're facing every single day living in the city, and so much of what you do. I mean, you're dubbed the urban alchemist. How does that apply? What do you do? I'd love to hear some of your tips and tricks of what we could do living in the city, being faced with all these toxins every single day. How do we optimize?
That's great. Yeah, it's such a huge topic too, because there are so many things about city life that I love. I've been in LA for 30 years, man. I moved here when I was 19 years old. I grew up in the sticks, in various places around the country, and I always wanted to be in a city. So when I turned 18, shortly after, I was like, I'm moving to LA, and I never left. So, you have sense of community. You have places like Next Health, my Kundalini Yoga's here. There's a zillion farm-to-table restaurants. There's the best health food store in the world, Erewhon. There's a zillion beautiful movie theaters. You can go see music. There's just, the sense of community and like-minded people. I can go almost anywhere in the city and meet people that speak my language. Not English, but I mean, culturally, it's a fit. And there's just so much opportunity here. Like speaking at your event tonight, and I've got another one tomorrow night at OsteoStrong. I mean, what would I do if I was like Ben Greenfield who lived in Spokane? I'd have to fly in for that, which is a pain in the ass to live somewhere remotely. So I love the city, but I got to say, man, it is not good for you. LA's bad. There are worse. I mean, not even just within the United States alone. I mean, I'm thinking of Bangkok and Beijing and different places like that that are just not fit for human life at all. But in this country, I would say New York City is probably the worst city we have for your health. And LA, I would maybe not even the worst, because you do have the opportunity to get into nature here. You have the beach, you have the mountains in fairly close proximity. There's a lot of parks. There's not high rises everywhere. There's building codes here. So it's, 4 or 5 levels everywhere, but there is a very dense population. So some of the issues are as follows. First is the water. Any tap water that gets on your body or in your body, and a lot of people think, I filter the water. It doesn't do anything. No, it doesn't. Your filter sucks.
Wow.
I mean, we could talk for 10 hours.
I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's always buying bottled water. I'm like, just use the filter. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's really a longer conversation, but municipal water in general worldwide is typically horrible for a number of reasons. I mean, thousands of toxins, but especially in a city like LA where we don't have native water, right? There are some cities, I don't know one, but let's just say Denver or something, right? Where you have runoff from snow and there's just a big water table. It's not somewhere that suffers drought. And I'm just arbitrarily picking Denver. It might be the worst ever. But I'm sure there are some cities that have their own water table and the water is perhaps less polluted and less toxic than ours. But the water is the first thing that we deal with in the city. And it's not just the water that you're drinking and that all of your bottled drinks are made with. It's the water you're bathing in, right? And the gases that you're inhaling every time you do a steam room or a shower or a hot bath, right? So the water's the first thing that gets you in the city. And then I'd say the second, and this isn't in order of damage, but it's just in order of maybe the top 4 or 5 things. The next is the lighting. When you get out into more rural areas, there's just more darkness at night. And our brains and bodies like darkness at night because that's how we've evolved. We've evolved to see a certain spectrum of light during the day all the spectrums going from dusk till dawn, a multitude of different colors that are present in natural sunlight. And then our brains and bodies and especially our circadian rhythms, when the sun goes down, that there's no more light except starlight and moonlight. And you get closer to that if you live in a small town or if you live out in the country. If you live in any city, and especially LA, there's very little difference to your eyes and to your brain between day and night. We think, oh, it's dark out now, but your eyes don't see darkness. Your eyes see LED headlights coming from every car that passes you. If you go into a store like Target or Whole Foods, all of that bright, white, very narrow spectrum, technically blue light, is telling your brain through your eyes that it's noon. This is very confusing to biology. So it's that non-native lighting. It's called, Dave Asprey calls it junk lighting. And I think that's a good way to say it. And it's not just the temperature of the light that's so unnatural, but it's the fact that the actual, the lighting that we use now, the fluorescent lights and LED lights that also have flicker. And flicker is not something you can see with the naked eye, but flicker is this sort of buzzing or this vibration of the light where it's, in milliseconds or whatever it is, flickering on and off essentially. And that's why sometimes you'll see it if you take a video camera or your video phone and you tape a light or, if you record a screen that has a movie playing, you'll see it like zzz, like flickering, right? And so flicker in lighting is another thing that just doesn't exist in nature. So the things in the city that are a problem are the things that are non-native to our biology that confuse our body. So the spectrum of light, the temperature of the light, the type of light, the sun doesn't flicker. The sun's steady, So that's a problem. And we used to think when the blue light thing started coming out that it was just about your melatonin. But it's about your entire circadian rhythm getting thrown off. It's not just melatonin, it's also cortisol. The minute I look up and look into that bright blue light above us in this room, I get cortisol, and so we're looking at our phones and all of the lighting inside. So my mitigation I guess the mitigation for water, the short answer is I just drink spring water from a mountain. I either get it myself or someone delivers it. True spring water, not fake like Asani. Oh, natural spring water, but actually from a spring. But that's a longer conversation. I did 6 hours worth of podcasts on water a few months ago. So if you just Google Luke Storey water podcast, you'll find my water trilogy if people want to go deeper. But the mitigation for that is heavy filtration on your bathing water and then not filtration on drinking water, but get real spring water. But for the lighting, what I do that keeps it kind of simple. You got
real quick, what do you think about reverse osmosis systems in your house?
I don't like drinking tap water in any shape or form for a number of reasons. It has a lot to do with the innate, how do I say it without sounding too tinfoil hat? Water has a certain frequency and energy to it. And when you take water that's been run through unnatural formations of pipe, right angles of pipe, you take water that has probably been part of a river or an irrigation system at some point in Colorado going through Nevada. I mean, the cycle of water, and then once water goes through certain municipal systems like LA, much of the water is recycled. So you might be drinking reverse osmosis water, but it's come out of people's asses, thousands of people's asses, flushed back into our water system, sterilized, all of the condoms, turds, needles, everything that gets flushed down the toilet, filtered out. I mean, this is how it is. I've interviewed people that work in water, sanitation, and they're like, yeah, this is how it goes. So, at the end of all that, you might be filtering out some of those, bacteria, some of the metals, toxins, but there's things that that even RO won't get out, and you're actually just creating a processed water, So for me, it's like not about being paranoid, but there's a scale of what's optimal on water. RO to me isn't the bottom. I mean, that's hella better than drinking just, like a Brita filter tap water, saying, oh my God, like you would have to hold me down and like taser me to get me to drink a cup of just filtered LA water, honestly. But it's on a spectrum. And I think that's a good way to approach health in general. There's one thing I really like that Dave Asprey did is the bulletproof diet is he made the diet on a spectrum. So it's not like this is bad, this is good. It's non-duality kind of based, right? So there's the green zone, then there's the, the kind of yellowy zone, then there's the orange, then there's the red, and then there's the bottom of the scale. So with water, I'd say RO is about in the middle. Could be worse, but you're drinking a dead processed water. So it's the difference between drinking fresh food off the vine, something that grew, or an animal that grew, and something that's been highly processed. So that water is now, to me, not really water anymore. It looks like water. It feels like water, but down on the molecular level, it has a different energetic signature than natural water that hasn't been through all of those crazy processes, and also just some of the things that can't be taken out of water. Now, if you get into the next level of water, even beyond filtration, all of that is deuterium, which is my latest area of research. And I mean, we honestly don't have time for it, but no filter gets out deuterium because deuterium is not a toxin. It's a type of hydrogen, what they call a heavy hydrogen. And deuterium is just in everything in nature. It's a natural occurring element, I guess you could say. But when it comes to tap water, most tap water in the world is loaded with deuterium, and it's not something you can filter out. There's not like a deuterium filter. Mm-hmm. The process of getting it out of water and creating water that's depleted and actually has a negative ppm of deuterium is, probably a few $100,000 to create a system that gets it out. It's really crazy. You have to boil the water, freeze the water, boil it, freeze it. It's insanely involved, but there are waters that are lower on the spectrum of deuterium, like spring water. My water that I get from livespringwater.com, shout out to my homies, was recently tested for deuterium levels, and it's at a 139 parts per million, which is really, really good. Most tap water and ocean water around 155. And the difference between 139 and 155 is huge because every part per million present in your tissues affects your mitochondria negatively. So why deuterium is bad and why this is really something people want to consider with their water source is that when your body hits a certain saturation point of deuterium, which again is this heavy hydrogen, I don't know how to explain it scientifically. It's like hydrogen molecule with 2 extra atoms or some shit, whatever it is. It's bad. Why it's bad is when you're loaded with deuterium, it breaks the nanomotors in your mitochondria, and your nanomotors are inside your mitochondria, and that's what produces ATP. So at the root of many metabolic diseases that have to do with your metabolism and that are really based on, at a simplistic level, a lack of energy, is heavy deuterium levels in your body. So that's something I didn't even know until a month ago. I just kind of found out about this. Jack Kruse has been talking about it and fully get it. Then I interviewed 2 scientists from deuterium depletion centers, amazing guys. We did a 3.5-hour podcast. Yeah. And I was like, oh, why don't you just filter the water? And they're like, they're just laughing. They're like, it's not a toxin. It doesn't work like that. You have to get water that's naturally low in deuterium, and no filtered water is going to be low unless it happens to be from, some little town in Iceland and their municipal waters from a spring that's low in deuterium. But what really sucks is when your body reaches a certain threshold of deuterium, it loses its ability to deplete it naturally. 15,000 years ago, pre-agriculture, when we were living with the land, hunter-gatherer style, we would have picked up deuterium in the environment, but you would be able to deplete it yourself because we were eating a keto Paleolithic diet at that time, and all the water was still clean. And so there would be deuterium in the environment, but you would never get over this threshold of the critical threshold is 130 parts per million. And once you get past that, your body doesn't have the metabolic energy to deplete it on its own. So that's this whole other, my mind's just been exploding. I'm like, thank God, I just knew intuitively spring water was the way to go. So that's my long answer to RO. Mitigation for the light. I can cover that really quick.
Yeah, let's talk about that for sure.
So we have this problem with all of this non-native light that, again, is you've got the flicker issue, and then you just have the spectrum of color. And mainly, it's seeing that really unnatural spectrum of light, which is really, when we talk about blue light, you just mean a light that doesn't have the yellow, the violet, the red present like the sun does. When you go outside and you see, there's this blue light because the sky's blue, there's actually, a whole spectrum of colors. Every color in the rainbow really is present. But with the lighting we have now, again, that overhead lighting, when you walk in a gas station at night and you're like, ow, God, this is heinous lighting. It's a very narrow spectrum of light that would never exist in nature. So again, that's the problem we're dealing with. That lighting's bad for you any time of the day, but especially after sunset. So what I do is two things. In my house a few years ago, I just installed a whole set of nighttime lighting, and I just use amber or red incandescent bulbs. And you can still get incandescent bulbs. Obama passed some law that kind of banned them for environmental and energy reasons, because incandescent bulbs use a lot more energy because they're hot, right? LEDs are cool. They're not even hot when you touch them a lot of the time. They use less energy. It's kind of the idea. So he effed that up pretty bad. But you can go on Amazon and you can search amber or red incandescent bulbs, and you can still get them because they are able to get around that law because they're quotes, end quotes, decorative bulbs. So they're like party lights. So I just have a whole set of lights in my place. So when it gets dark, I habituated myself. It maybe took a month where I just don't hit certain light switches after dark. So I have a whole set of lamps, and some rooms, like you go in your kitchen, you'll have like your cabinet lights are one switch, and then the overhead lights are another switch. Many bathrooms are like that. Mm-hmm. The fan will have a light, that kind of thing. So in the rooms where I have two switches, one switch is my night lights and one switch is the bright lights for when I need to see. And then it's just at night, it's really lovely, actually. When it gets dark, it's always dusk in my house, too. So it feels like firelight, and it's just very calming. And then there's a hack you can do on your phone that's not night shift, which is okay, but it still leaves the green spectrum, which still kills your melatonin, about 50% of what blue light does. But you can go into your settings. It's too hard to explain. But you can go into your settings and turn your phone like dark red at night, basically. Yeah, it's cool.
And is that a setting similar to night shift, or is it like you're hacking the system?
You're hacking it. You're just going in and you're playing with the color temperature and the brightness and stuff, and you can turn it red. It took me so many times to remember. I know how to do it on my own, but I try to show people, and I'm like, God, every time I forget. I think I have a video of it that I made, a screen recording, that I always post to Instagram periodically, just to teach people how to do it, because it's annoying.
We'll put the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, you'll do it once and you're like, how did I do that again? It's really hard to get back there. They don't make it easy. And then if I go out, I have my raw optics, raw, like sun raw optics. I think they're rawoptics.com or .co, and they made me some prescription custom blue blocking glasses that block all the spectrums except 550 is like the critical level of 550 nanometers. So everything's very rose colored. And so when I drive at night, or tonight when I'm going to be doing the talk upstairs, once the sun goes down, I'll put those glasses on. I mean, mine are pretty cool. They're kind of fashionable, but still I feel dorky wearing them sometimes. But they're a huge upgrade over the old blue blockers off Amazon. So now there's a number of companies that make some that are decent. So when I'm out and about, I wear eyewear that blocks that toxic spectrum of light. So I'm like 90% of the time now, I don't mess around. Once it gets dark, I tell my brain that it's dark by filtering the light or just manipulating the light in my environment. The only time I won't have them on is if I want to enjoy a movie or something like that. I'm like, I saw Blade Runner last year or whatever, and I had my stupid orange glasses. Like, I ruined the movie, but I didn't bring my clear prescription glasses, so it would have been blurry. So I'd sit here and watch a red movie, and it was a very visual movie. I was like, don't do that again. Just take the hit.
Should have watched Martian or something where it's supposed to be red anyway.
It's red anyway, yeah. So that's the water and the lighting. And then if you want me to buzz through EMFs super quick.
Love it if you talk a little about EMFs, yeah.
So the more I dig into biohacking and all of the health stuff, I mean, the water's crucial because your body's made of water. We are water. What isn't spirit is mostly water. Just think about it. When you get cremated, if you choose to do that, what's left at the end? Some carbon dust. Where's the rest of you? It evaporated because you're made of water. Okay, so that's how important it is. Your blood, your saliva, your lymphatic fluid, your semen. I mean, everything. Your tears are water. Okay, so that's that. Then the lighting, just do what the sun does. If you're not doing that, your body gets pissed at you and gives you diseases. Okay, then EMFs. The more research I do, I think this is probably. I can't pick a number one. I can't pick a favorite. It's like picking your favorite kid probably. But the EMFs are gnarly, especially in the bedroom. So my recommendation for other people is what I'm about to do is I'm going to have an EMF mitigation specialist, this guy, Brian Hoyer, who I just recently interviewed on my show. Brilliant guy, young guy, super passionate about EMS, very knowledgeable, trained by an organization called GeoVital out of Austria, who are like the Mac daddies of EMF mitigation worldwide. They've been doing it since the 70s, like the first scientists that really understood the dangers of EMF and how to fix it.
And could you actually give, for those who don't watch your show, give like the EMF for Dummies explanation?
Yeah. So what we're talking about is electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic frequencies. And there are three main types that are present in our environment, especially in a city like LA, that are harmful to your biology and break you down and eventually lead to a number of different illnesses. The first one would be, let's talk about the most basic one, would be a magnetic field. So sitting in here, like where we're sitting right now, the only magnetic field we're probably getting would be from the motors on those refrigerators. So a magnetic field is going to come from any type of engine or machinery. Your refrigerator will produce a massive magnetic field, and this is disruptive to your magnetic field. We are also not only made of water, you know, we got a refined doctor sitting here, we're also made of electricity, right? I mean, we are wired for sound. We're buzzing. So, you know, this has to do with all of your meridian systems. This has been known for thousands of years. This is pre-Western medicine. We know that we're lit up and we have magnetism, right? And the earth has a magnetic field, but we've created these devices and these engines and motors that create a negative field that disrupts our natural magnetic field, right? It's not in, there's discord there. The second one would be radio frequencies, which is non-ionizing radiation, I believe. And this is your cell phone, this is your microwave oven, this is cell towers nearby, this is your Wi-Fi, smart meters, smart anything that produces a signal, smart TVs. It's so funny how you know, I'm a very conspiracy theory guy. So a lot of them are true, I'm sorry. It's like Kurt Cobain said, just because, what did he say? Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not after me.
Exactly.
But yeah, they call all of these devices and stuff smart, and it's such a trick because they're really dumb. Like they're actually very unsmart. But those devices produce radio frequencies, and that's just straight up radiation. And then you have your electrical frequencies, and that's coming out of all of the wiring. So the 60 hertz, we're sitting in this room. Every outlet you see is connected to, you know, you've seen behind drywall when a building's being built, right? If they're not shielded, which of course they're not, because who would spend the money to do that if you don't know that you're building an ecologically sound structure? Everywhere there's a wire around here is creating a field. And if you're in here with an EMF meter, 6 feet out from every wall or every device that's plugged into a wall is generating a field. Oh. Yeah, so for all of you listening that are sleeping with your headboard next to the wall and there's an outlet or wires in the wall behind you, you are literally frying your brain. I'm sorry to be, again, I'm not being paranoid. It's just, if you see this shit with an EMF meter, you're like, right. Whoa. Wow. So those are the three fields, okay? They all do different things. Some are more harmful than others, but the problem with them, you know, where you want to start is in the bedroom, because the problem is that when you have those three fields, which is usually going to be the latter two, the radio frequencies from your cell phone and cell towers and all that, and the electrical field from the wiring in your room. One of the main issues is that it stops you from going into fully parasympathetic state when you're sleeping. So your body is really trying to detox when you're sleeping and regenerate and restore, but it's still fighting the environment that you're in because, again, we have not evolved to withstand all of those disruptive frequencies that are inherent to our sleep environment. So the one time when I believe you should really be truly resting and staying protected is when you sleep. So the strategy is this. So far as I've figured out, and I'm still in the process of doing this myself. A is I absolutely have my phone on airplane, and I use it as like a iPod or a podcast player. I listen to audiobooks. That's how I fall asleep. voices put me to sleep for some reason. But I have it as far away as I can. It's like maybe 4 feet from me. I scoot way down in my bed so I'm not up against the wall, you know, because I kind of sleep scrunched up anyway. So I'll scoot halfway down the bed. So I'm not, and I also put some some silver mylar material between the wall and my bed frame for the electrical fields. And actually the radio frequencies too will be blocked by that. So I have my own little patch together thing, but if you want to really get real, you have an EMF specialist come in with a meter. And this is not just a little cheesy meter you buy for $200 on Amazon. That guy, Brian, he's going to come out in October and do my place. His equipment is in a huge, one of those Pelican cases. It's about $11,000 worth of stuff. Very sensitive machinery because you don't want to get false readings, too negative or too positive. So you have an EMF specialist come in, read all of the fields in your bedroom, and then there's 2 ways that you can mitigate. Well, 2 ways that really work. One is you can get shielded fabric and build a Faraday cage bed, which is probably what I'm going to do because I already have this beautiful wood frame bed that's 4 posts, you know? So all you'd have to do is just measure the EMF fabric, and that blocks out the radio frequencies and the electrical fields 100%. You have to put something underneath too, so they don't come up from the apartment below you, which I would have to do.
And what does that fabric look like? Does it look like tin foil? Because I don't think
No, it doesn't. It's amazing. I know you'd think it would be some space age ugly.
You don't want to ruin the mojo in there.
No. Well, that's why I haven't done it. The old fabric was this silver. It was years ago. I looked into it and I was like, I just can't. Like,
never bringing someone in that room. They think they're never coming out.
Explain that to a date. You know? I mean, talk about tinfoil hat. No, the fabric they have at GeoVital now is beautiful. It actually looks like a very sheer, almost like mosquito netting. It looks like a sheer, like a linen, like a very thin linen. It's actually really beautiful. And you can also take that fabric and sew it onto your existing, hopefully blackout curtains, right? Because you want to sleep in the dark. So you can sew it on the back side of your curtains and block out the frequencies on the windows. But for the Faraday cage, you get this mesh that goes under the bed on the floor, and that prevents anything from coming up in your wiring underneath you. Whether there's people living below you, or even if you're in a house, you probably have wires in your floorboards. So that stops that, and then that's plugged into a ground that goes into the ground. So your whole field there is grounded into the earth, and then you shield your bed in this really nice looking fabric. It's a little bit weird. It wouldn't go with the style of my house, but I don't care. I'd rather have a weird looking bedroom than cancer. You know what I'm saying? So the Faraday bed is the first option. Now, the cooler option that's a bit more expensive is you shield your whole bedroom. So if you have carpet, you rip up the carpet, you put the mesh on the floor, you cover the whole floor. If you have wood floors, you just put it under your bed, and then you put like a rug over the mesh, Persian rug or whatever, something like that. That's probably what I would do. Then you paint the whole room in shielded paint. They have this EMF-proof paint now that blocks the electric frequencies and the radio frequencies, electrical fields rather, and the radio frequencies from coming through the walls. And then you get that shielded fabric, and you just make curtains of that, or you have it sewn onto your existing curtains if you don't want that look of like sheer curtains. So you could turn, like the room we're in now, you could turn this whole room into a Faraday cage to the point where you bring your cell phone in here and it's dead. Nothing will work. No Wi-Fi will. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Because you can take the meters after you've shielded a room and you will not get any signal on anything. It's dead. And it's like, it's Paleolithic sleeping. Yeah. It's like people eat paleo. You can actually sleep paleo. So it's the closest thing you can get to taking a time machine pre-industrial civilization. And I think that is really the key to health. And Dr. Klinghardt, who's a famous natural doctor, you might have heard of Klinghardt. I think he's up in Canada, German or Austrian guy. He's kind of the Mac daddy of treating Lyme disease and really, chronic incurable diseases. The first thing he requires his patients to do is shield their bedroom. And he won't even work with you unless you Faraday your room. Because over 30 years he's been treating people, they don't get well if they're still in that EMF field. So that's what I'll be working on next. Amazing. And it's one of those things, once it's done, then you just live your life and you just chill. It's not like you have to think about it anymore. But now that I know the truth, and you have someone come in your room with some of that equipment, you're just like, oh, this can't be good. Especially when you see the numbers, you should be at a 0 on a particular meter, and it's like it goes up 9,000 or something. It's like the threshold of safe is 200. You're at 10,000 or whatever. It's not good, and it's not tinfoil hat stuff. I mean, you just have to think about, again, going back in a Paleolithic sort of framework. How have we evolved? We've evolved to drink water from springs. That's how we got here. We've evolved to, after dark, only have moonlight and starlight and firelight. We've evolved to only be dealing with the magnetic frequencies of the earth and any electrical fields that are present in our natural environment. And anything that's not that leads to pathology. Wow. So you can either move out to the woods and live in a freaking cave, or you can live in a city and make some of these seemingly paranoid and sometimes inconvenient and expensive mitigation techniques and tools to recreate a natural environment in your city life.
I think it's so key to detoxify your life in all the ways that you talked about, and also avoiding heavy metals and, watching what kind of food you eat, avoiding the foods with lots of toxins in them. There's so many ways in the city that we are exposed to toxins, and all the things you talked about are just key. And I think I can't wait to see your new bedroom. Maybe you can post some pictures online or something after you do it.
I'm going to do videos of the whole process. Awesome. When Brian comes out. Yeah, I'm going to do some YouTube videos, because it's hard to tackle that stuff. I mean, I've known about this for a long time, but it's like, you got to get the guy to come out with the meters, and then you got to order the fabric and measure stuff and the paint. I mean, it's like a remodel. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. And I don't think anyone's going to really do it until they see it done. And they're like, first the shock of the danger that we're all putting ourselves in, right? And then seeing that you can just hire someone to do the heavy lifting to figure out for you. Oh. So that at the end of it, what you want is you want to go in your bedroom and have a dead phone.
Right. That's
like, if you got that, you're golden. Well, at least for the radio frequencies, then the wiring and stuff is another issue. What I think the future is, and that this exists, and Brian calls himself a building biologist, is if you go build a house, you bring in experts and you build your house with all of your Ethernet is hardwired, your internet is hardwired with Ethernet cables. You shield all of the wiring in the house, so you don't even need to put that paint. Although you would put the paint to block all of the cell signal and stuff coming into your house. But you could create a whole house that's protected, and your whole family is in there. And I mean, if you can imagine how calm the energy is in a protected environment. I've only been in a sauna. This company, Sauna Space, Brian works with them, and they have these little canvas tent saunas, and they Faraday the little sauna, and you sit in there, and it's like, I swear to God, man, you wouldn't even have to tell anyone what it is. They would just sit in there and go, I feel different. This is different. It's not that it's quiet sound wise, because when I was in it, it was in Paleo FX, a huge conference. It's loud as hell in there. But you step in there and it's like, you just feel the energy go, zoom. Everything's very still. Because we know what that feels like, because when we get way out in the middle of nowhere, we have that. But we never have that in the city. So imagine your whole house is that way, and you have a dinner party and people come over and they're just going, amber lighting, very chill. It feels like firelit environment, and then everything is just shut off. They're going, why doesn't my phone work in here? You go, leave your phone at the door. Unless you have to post on social media. No.
Well, so cool. Thank you so much, Luke. I think that's all we have time for today, because we got to get you upstairs to do our talk totally. To the group of 100 people waiting for you. But this was amazing. Thank you for doing this. And I can't wait to be on your podcast and listen to what you have to say upstairs.
Me too. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, it's funny. I just kind of spilled the beans on a lot of my talk upstairs. You guys can sit it out because you just heard the thing, but that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I love sharing this stuff, and having the ability to share it with an audience is really fun too, because I think everyone connects to, especially when you just talk about getting back to nature, but not having to give up the conveniences. I think people really connect to that. So yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.